Thank you so much, Kula, and thank you everybody for joining us today. We're really excited for you to join us for a 2-day event, 3 hours today, 3 hours tomorrow, to learn about and hear about things that are happening in CalFlexHub, the California Load Flexibility Research and Deployment Hub. Go ahead to the next slide. CalFlexHub is an EPIC funded program. That's the Electric Program Investment Charge. And we have 18 funded partners. You're going to hear from many of those partners today. We have a distinguished series of guests and partners and researchers. We have some community aggregation partners. We have some disadvantaged community representatives and low and moderate income people to help us understand how we can move California towards a time where we're using building loads and EVs to provide flexible load to enable a cleaner power grid that's resilient, affordable, equitable, and reliable. So we're going to be providing you with an overview of the program and some of the technologies. Thanks for joining this new Zoom platform. It's really interesting to see Zoom develop into this kind of platform, and good luck navigating it. You can check out our website, calflexhub.lbl.gov. Go ahead to the next slide. So this slide gives you an introduction into some of the key elements of what we're doing in CalFlexHub. We're trying to support the state's goals of using real-time pricing information and other grid signals to automatically adjust energy use and to enable these loads to lower the carbon footprint of the building and the transportation system, so the greenhouse gases. We're doing work on identifying, developing, and demonstrating pre-commercial load flexible technologies. And we're going to give you an introduction into those technologies. We will provide these slides and these recordings on our website. So the slides will be shared on the website and the recording of the event itself. So we're looking at controls and communication technologies, as well as a number of types of technologies. And I'll give you an introduction into some of those. One of the important things we need to do is to make sure that we understand utility bills and how bills might change and how this kind of technology can be developed to make sure that we're making equitable investments and understand low and moderate income folks and what's going to happen to their bill, and whether that have the kind of technology and controls and communications that can respond to these systems. So you'll see there a picture. The picture shows that in the middle of the day, in many parts of the year, we have a lot of excess solar, and I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. And later in the day, when the sun goes down, our grid is peaking. So we're interested in moving loads around to use as much of that clean electricity, which is also potentially the lowest price of the day. So we want those electricity tariffs to reflect system conditions, and we want to support the idea of devices to be able to receive signals that reflect the greenhouse gas situation on the grid, as well as the cost of electricity. And we're going to be looking at the controls and communications to enable that. Now that picture looks like the duck curve that many of you are familiar with, but California may also have cold winter morning peaks, so that morning hump may be bigger than that afternoon hump. And this does not mean just doing demand response on the top 200 or 250 hours. It means devices are continuously listening to signals and setting their controls and consumption that enable that interoperability. Go ahead to the next slide. So this is part of the vision, is we're interested in supporting the California Energy Commission's Market-Informed Demand Automation Server, or MIDAS. So MIDAS is being developed to enable the standard way that we represent electricity tariffs. And we're working with utilities and community choice aggregators across the state, as well as municipal utilities, to try to understand how to move forward this idea of having common representations of the electricity tariff and enable that information to be communicated to support the state's load management standards as well as working with the California Independent System Operator and CAISO. Go ahead to the next slide. California had two remarkable days in 2022. One of them was in May, and we actually had several days where we set a record for renewables curtailment, but we also set a record for renewables energy. This was the most important thing, is that we supplied several hours of energy with 100% renewable energy. And we want to make sure we're using as much of that energy as we can during those hours of the day when it's very clean. And we had many hours where 100% of the electricity was supplied by the renewable energy. Go ahead to the next slide. But we also had a peak day where we consumed about 52 gigawatts of electricity. And this curve is very different from the previous curve. Demand response did its part, and flexible load to try to help maintain the grid. We did not have rolling brownouts or blackouts. And we need flexible load on these days as well as those spring days. So it's a lot of data here that I'm showing you, but the most important thing to remember is that the way we control our load in spring, summer, winter, and fall is different. So we're preparing these loads and these control systems to be able to receive these signals from the grid and respond. Go ahead to the next slide. This is a picture of some of the types of technologies that we're evaluating in CalFlexHub. And you'll see we're doing all different sectors: single family, multifamily, small commercial, large commercial, and some campuses. And on the left, it shows the kinds of devices we're interacting with: heat pump water heaters, heat pumps for cooling and heating, thermal energy storage, electric energy storage, pool pumps, and EVs. And all of these have innovations in software and controls. So we're trying to understand how to enable the scaled deployment of these technologies to provide that important grid resource. And on the bottom, you'll see a number of our projects also have hardware retrofits. So we want to make sure that we're understanding the current state of technology and how to accelerate the adoption of these more advanced technologies, including heat pump water heaters, heat pumps, thermal storage, and smart electric panels that will help a homeowner reduce the need to upgrade their service panel as we electrify space heating, water heating, and transportation EVs. Go ahead to the next slide. We've been doing work to make sure that we understand what this means for communities that may not have access to these technologies and communication systems at this time. Are there things that we could be doing to help in making sure they can have the communication, internet or FM signals? So we've been working with the Association for Energy Affordability, Rising Sun, the CEC, and researchers at LBL that are working on how we value the low and moderate income and disadvantaged community benefits in utility programs. And that's a new part of the Department of Energy's Justice 40 program, that we make sure that a lot of our investments and a lot of our benefits are considering these communities, and that they're not left behind in the investment of the technology and the research. And Momentum, who's helping us sponsor today's event, is working on socializing the innovations and how do we create deployment pathways, and we understand the entrepreneurial and business models associated with these technologies. I have one more slide that I'm going to use to wrap up. Go ahead to the next slide. I want to emphasize that these are some of the technologies that we're working on within CalFlexHub that are going to be deployed in communities across California. We're doing work in multifamily heat pump water heaters. And in the middle, we're putting in some heat pumps in some disadvantaged communities in California, in small commercial buildings, libraries, community colleges, a couple of churches. And we're working with our partners to make sure that we understand how to install those heat pumps and make sure that they can respond to these signals. Those heat pumps will be integrated with thermal storage, electric storage, EVs, so that HP Flex Cloud is looking at what does it mean for the mass of the building and different kinds of storage to be integrated with those heat pumps, So we make sure that we're managing those winter morning peaks as well as the cooling on a hot summer afternoon and that spring renewable opportunities, so that these opportunities enable us to think about the controls in a new way. And on the right, I have a picture of a battery-powered fan with thermostats. Not all of these fans have batteries yet, but we're thinking about distributed batteries in buildings. The battery might be in the fan, the battery could be in a refrigerator, the battery could be in a lighting system. So as we think about thermostats and cooling loads that we're all aware of, we're also thinking about distributed batteries, entire stationary as well as mobile batteries, and how to integrate these flexible loads with new technology that's emerging for disadvantaged communities and other communities. So I'm really excited to join you all in this 2-day symposium. And go ahead to the next slide. Those are the end of my comments. And I'm going to be introducing Andrew McAllister. Commissioner McAllister has been a pioneer in energy efficiency, and he's helping the state of California on their energy efficiency standards. He's been a leader in the load management standards, and he's been working since the early 1990s to help work with utilities and to help us move towards a clean, affordable, and equitable energy economy. He's also got experience working in Southeast Asia and South America, and he worked at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab as well early in his career. So I look forward to your comments, Andrew, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, Marianne, thank you so much, and great content in your presentation and setting up the 2 days. I'm really honored, deeply honored, really, to be here with you. Congratulations on your Lifetime Achievement Award. I mean, I think emblematic of your long career working on these issues and really laying foundational pathway, just building the tools that we're going to need going forward. And I just want to talk about at a high level about what we're doing at the California Energy Commission. And we'll just stick on this slide just for a second. I want to make 2 quick announcements, really. One announcement and one just kind of heads up. California took over the #1 spot back from Massachusetts in the ACEE State Efficiency Scorecard. A couple of years ago, the last time they did the scorecard, it was 2021. Then they took a little hiatus for the pandemic, but we are again #1, and that event is happening right now, the public rollout. The press release went out this morning. Commissioner Genevieve Sharoma from the PUC is going to be representing California on that webinar that ACEE is putting on to announce the results of the scorecard. But it's really gratifying to be in the #1 spot again. And it's particularly gratifying because ACEE keyed or revolved this year's scorecard around equity. And California is just doing so much in equity. Marianne just talked about some of the targeted initiatives that the CalFlexHub is supporting to install these advanced technologies in disadvantaged communities and low-income households across the state, and that's the direction we are going as a state. Is really forming our vision centered on equity. So there's really a lot of synergy here, and CalFlexHub is really at the center of a lot of it. The second thing I wanted to say is that just refer you to a New York Times article that about Germany having discovered heat pumps. We know that heat pumps have been in Europe and making inroads probably ahead of the United States, but Germany, with Russian gas and all the crises they're having in Europe, the Ukraine war and scarcity, they are focusing on scaling up heat pumps, and they have a goal of 6 million heat pumps by 2030, which sounds awful familiar to me. So I think California's goal of 6 million heat pumps by 2030 is having legs. It's moving all over the world. And Governor Newsom's more recent goal of 7 million climate-friendly and climate-ready buildings by 2035 is another huge step in that direction. So we are leading here in California, and I think a lot of eyes are on us. Some want us to fail, more want us to succeed. And so I think we just are very cognizant at the Energy Commission of that leadership position. And CalFlexHub is a key role or a key resource for the state to develop in this innovative direction that we need to go. Shift, shed, shape, that lexicon really came out of Berkeley Labs and the demand response studies that have happened over the last few years. And it has helped to define this vision that we are putting in practice, starting at the state level at the Energy Commission. So we want to make sure that every device that goes onto the grid is a good citizen of the grid, and that in a way, each device kind of pays it forward, that can interact. Prices to devices is one way to put it, but we also have, and I'll talk about this a little bit, in the load management standards context, we are using carbon signals to send a load flexibility signal to individual devices. The CAISO can send a congestion signal in the form of a flex alert, for example. And those kinds of approaches are only going to proliferate as we really develop and mature this load flexibility ecosystem. Aggregated load flexibility is the cheapest and arguably most reliable resource that we will have going forward as we transition to an energy system, to an electricity system that modulates at the rhythms of nature, right? Solar, wind. We have to do that handshake with our devices, with our buildings, and that's where we're going as a state, is supporting that with policy. So next slide. Let's see, I think there was one between, if I'm not wrong, maybe go back one. Oh, nope, oh, must have gotten dropped. That's okay. Here is essentially a list. Marianne put all the visuals and the interesting analyses and the results of that in her presentation. But I just wanted to go through and just make clear that as the state's energy policy and planning agency, the Energy Commission is doing a lot to sort of establish the playing field and to line it so that all participants and innovators can come form part of this load flexibility ecosystem. And really we focus on the things, I certainly take this seriously. We want the Energy Commission, in partnership with the Public Utilities Commission, you're going to hear from President Reynolds tomorrow. So we always, we're coordinated very tightly with the other agencies, including the ARB increasingly. But we want the state to play a role that only the state can play. We want to, fix or address market barriers, things that the industry won't do on its own or hasn't done on its own. We want to sort of smooth that out, decrease transaction costs, and create these widely accessible resources. And so our load flexibility efforts really focus on that kind of an approach, that really the state plays the role that it can and must play, and it has the authority to play. So top of the list here is load management standards. Many of you on this call probably have paid attention to that. We adopted these standards back in August, and they're based on an authority that we have, load management standards authority, that dates all the way back to the Warren-Alquist Act in the 70s, but it has only been rarely used. And it's if you read the statute, it's actually quite prescient. But we're applying the load management standards authority in a way that really is unique to the digital age. So we really couldn't have done this even 5 or 10 years ago. And so we're essentially establishing a tool, Midas, that has all of the state's time-dependent rates up to date all the time, in real time, on a cloud-accessible, machine-readable, API-compatible server. So that's the Market-Informed Demand Automation Server, Midas. And so that enables automation around this prices to devices, congestion to devices, carbon to devices ecosystem that Marianne described and that we'll talk about throughout today and tomorrow. So that's an exciting development. I think that is extremely innovative. No other state agency across the US, no other state energy office or PUC really has similar authority. So a lot of eyes on this internationally, Australia, Europe, very, very keen to learn from our effort here with load management standards and Midas. The second thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, just mentioned, is the flexible demand appliance standards. So SB 49, Senator Skinner's bill of a few years ago, we're in the process of implementing that, starting with pool pump controls. And that will create requirements for native load flexibility in end-use devices, category by category. So we'll do storage, we'll do heat pump water heaters. We'll make sure that all these devices that go into the grid have the hardware and the interface to be good citizens and to enable that automation natively as a condition of sale in the state. So as those technologies become mature and they get lower in cost, that will open up all sorts of possibilities. So you can imagine, 10 years from now, we have millions literally of devices throughout the state that are ebbing and flowing their energy use, modulating their energy use with grid conditions, with cost, with carbon, et cetera. We also are doing much of that similar kinds of work in the energy code itself. So we do the Building Energy Efficiency Standards, Part 6 of Title 24. And we're building in credits and sort of approaches that favor not just heat pumps, very strongly heat pumps themselves, but also load flexibility in terms of how we calculate the cost effectiveness of measures that we consider for requirement in the code. And so load flexibility will have real value for builders to include in their new construction. In reliability planning, load flexibility is a resource. So SB 100 is our long-term planning for carbon neutrality by 2045. So as part of the resource mix, load flexibility has value. A load flexible grid is one that has lower costs. Load flexibility is one of the very few resources that can provide downward pressure on rates. And we all know that there's lots of upward pressure on rates with fires and resilience and undergrounding and just all the cost pressures on the upward side. Well, downward is they're few and far between. And load flexibility is one of the principal ones, along with energy efficiency itself. We collaborate with the PUC a lot, and President Reynolds will talk somewhat about that, but on demand flexibility, on high DER future, rate making itself, the guidance to the utilities about how they can adapt and develop new rates. Load management standards has asked the utilities to develop these time-dependent rates that are locational marginal pricing that have those elements in them. And they will be taking those rate proposals to the PUC in the case of the investor-owned utilities and to the LADWP and SMUD's decision-making, rate-making authorities, their boards in the case of the publicly owned utilities. So that's an extremely important collaboration to make sure that tariffs, that the electric rates actually support load flexibility and reward it. So finally, what we're here today and tomorrow to talk about is CalFlexHub. The R&D element here in terms of opening up possibilities, paving the way, developing technologies, testing those technologies, all that is just incredibly important. It doesn't happen without the rubber hitting the road. And so that's really what we're talking about with funding CalFlexHub and all the things that Berkeley Lab and partners are doing with that resource. And again, the state's sort of role is not to get in the way, not to impede, but actually to facilitate and encourage and referee a little bit and line the playing field so that everybody knows how to proceed. I think I will stop there, other than just to say I'm extremely excited. You can sense my excitement. We have a great team at the Energy Commission that's moving forward on all of these tracks. Altogether, over the coming years, this will add up to a resource that will be key for not just our decarbonization journey. In the near term, certainly decarbonization, but in the long term, load flexibility really is a reliability and cost management resource. So, we will have a clean grid in 2045, probably sooner, 100% clean, but that grid will be lower cost and it will be reliable in large measure because of the load flexibility research that CalFlexHub is doing and all these other initiatives that are meant to implement it at scale. So the grid is going to be a better place to be. The devices are going to be an integral part of the solution, handshaking with supply in this distributed energy world that we're entering, that we're really already in. So super excited about this innovation and our leadership position here in California. Really looking forward to collaborating with Berkeley Lab and FlexHub and all the partners. But beyond that, many of you on this call probably are involved in this ecosystem as well. California is just the place to be in innovation. Large economy, we can move the market, and we're developing these resources really for the benefit of our state, but much further beyond. So really happy to be in the conversation and doing my part to lead. We have a lot of good staff at the Energy Commission, so look forward to seeing all of you in the near future working on this together. I'll pass it back to you, Marianne.